Kirk's critics had a very different view of him, arguing that his positions alienated. He also said his administration is probing left-wing activists and groups following Kirk's death. The Department of Justice is also investigating networks of radical left maniacs who fund, organize, fuel and perpetrate political violence, Trump said. And we think we know who many of them are. But law enforcement can only be the beginning of our response to Charlie's murder. No side in American politics has a monopoly on disturbed or misguided people. But there's one part of our political community which believes they have a monopoly on truth, goodness and virtue, and concludes they have also a monopoly on power, thought and speech, he said. Well, that's not happening anymore. We've turned that corner very quickly. Tragically, atrocities of this kind and the kind that we saw in Utah, of all places, are the eventual consequence of that kind of thinking. In response to Kirk's assassination, Trump and allies have promised to go after left-wing groups that they believe fomented the anger that led to his death. So far, the federal investigation has not found any link between Robinson, the suspect, and left-wing groups. 3 people familiar with the investigation told NBC News. The Justice Department said in a study last year that the number of far-right attacks in the country continues to outpace all other types of terrorism and domestic violent extremism. The study was recently removed from the department's website, according to 404 Media. Prosecutors have said Robinson targeted Kirk because of his political expression, while his mother told investigators in part that over the last year or so, Robinson had become more political and had started to lean more to the left. People are overcome with emotion while watching a Charlie Kirk tribute video during a memorial for him Sunday, Sept. 21, 2025, in Glendale, Arizona. People are overcome with emotion watching a Charlie Kirk tribute video at the memorial. John Locker, AP. Though authorities say the initial evidence indicates Robinson acted alone, speakers on Sunday spread responsibility for Kirk's death beyond Robinson. Miller, the deputy White House chief of staff, decried our enemies, who he said are trying to foment hatred against us. You have no idea the dragon you have awakened, Miller added. You have no idea how determined we will be to save this civilization, to save the West, to save this republic, because our children are strong, and our grandchildren will be strong, and our children's children's children will be strong. And what will you leave behind? Nothing, nothing to our enemies. You have nothing to give. You have nothing to offer. You have nothing to share but bitterness. Kirk had long been a close ally of Trump's and a key player in the MAGA movement. But his rise was accelerated by a host of factors. The COVID pandemic, Joe Biden's presidency, and the growth of his own podcast, all of which came together since 2020. He also became a more powerful force on the right after he made a more expressly religious turn, NBC News reported last year. After having earlier argued that politics should be advanced through a secular worldview, Kirk began to more closely embrace Christian nationalism, saying on a 2022 episode of his podcast that there is no separation of church and state. In 2021, he co-founded TPUSA Faith. Turning Point USA's fundraising exploded and its mission expanded at that time. A woman prays during the public memorial service for right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. A woman prays at the memorial service. Mandel Non, AFP. Getty Images. Kirk's religious convictions featured heavily in the speeches Sunday. Vance described Kirk as a hero to the United States of America and a martyr for the Christian faith. Conservative personality Benny Johnson said he is a martyr in the true Christian tradition. and asked the gatherers to raise your hand if Charlie Kirk centered you a little closer to Christ. Tucker Carlson, the prominent right-wing commentator and podcast host, described Kirk as a Christian evangelist who was bringing the gospel to the country and doing the thing that the people in charge hate most, which is calling for them to repent. Hegseth said Kirk realized, like so many of us have, that this is not a political war, it's not even a cultural war. It's a spiritual war, faith and family. Others highlighted Kirk's college campus debates and what they saw as his open-minded nature toward those who opposed his views. Donald Trump Jr., who was close with Kirk, said he embodied something at the very core of our movement. When people disagree with us, we don't silence them, we don't destroy them, and we certainly don't sink to violence. Charlie delighted in his belief that people could be persuaded, he added. He believed the way to win hearts was with truth, with courage and with conversation. President Donald Trump embraces Erica Kirk at a memorial for conservative activist Charlie Kirk, Sunday, Sept. 21, 2025, at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Trump embraces Erica Kirk at the memorial service. John Locker, AP. Kirk's critics had a very different view of him, arguing that his positions alienated large parts of the population and were, at times, toxic and dangerous. Kirk once said Biden should honestly be put in prison and/or given the death penalty for his crimes against America, suggested that every gender-affirming clinic doctor should face a Nuremberg-style trial, and called the Rev. Martin Luther King Jr. an awful person who said one good thing he actually didn't believe, among other remarks. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Kirk understood that we were not created to isolate ourselves from one another, but to engage. The irony in all this is that what our nation needs, one of the many things it needs, he added, is the ability to discuss our differences openly, honestly, peacefully, respectfully. Quote,